Whenever I sit down to think about the second act of life retirement, slowing down, whatever you want to call it, my brain immediately goes to the highlight reel.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking about travel. I'm thinking about finally learning to cook something other than pasta, maybe, buying a little place near the water. It's all very cinematic.
That is the natural human instinct. I
Yeah.
mean, we plan for the reward. You work hard for decades and you want to visualize the payoff.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to spend their Tuesday afternoon visualizing the clinical realities of aging.
No, definitely not. But here is the thing, and this is why I want to do this deep dive today. There is a massive financial wild card sitting in the deck.
Right.
It's the one thing that can derail all those cinematic plans, yet it's the topic we are most likely to, just ignore. We are talking about the cost of long-term health care.
It is the elephant in the room, and unfortunately, it is an elephant that is getting more expensive every year. Today, we are going to unpack some insights provided by the team at Confidence Financial Partners.
And before we dive into the scary numbers, tell me a bit about who this team is, because in the financial world, titles can get a little murky.
Right. So what stands out here is that they act as fiduciaries. That means they are legally bound to put the client's interest first. It's not just a sales pitch.
Okay.
And they take a collaborative approach. We aren't just talking about a generalist advisor. They have certified financial planner professionals working alongside team members with designations like NSSA, MBA, and CRPC.
Okay, stop right there. I know what an MBA is, but NSSA and CRPC, that sounds like alphabet soup. Why should I care about those letters?
It's a fair question. The NSSA stands for National Social Security Advisor, and CRPC is a Chartered Retirement Planning Counselor.
Oh,
So it means they aren't just guessing about how Social Security works or how retirement income flows. They have specific technical training in those exact areas.
got it.
It's the difference between, say, a general contractor and a specialist who knows exactly how the plumbing works in a vintage house.
Right, so they have the technical chops. Now, they have this framework called the Confidence Retirement Pathway,
Mhm.
which covers a lot of ground. But today, we are zooming in on one specific intersection.
Where investment and risk management meets healthcare.
That's the one.
And that is the friction point. Most people keep those two worlds separate. You have your investment portfolio, your stocks, your bonds, your 401k over here, and then maybe you have some health insurance over there.
Mm-hmm.
The advisors at Confidence are suggesting that is a mistake. You have to integrate them because if you don't, the healthcare costs will eat the investment portfolio alive.
All right, let's look at the reality. The Confidence team provided some data sourced from Genworth, and I have to be honest, it made my stomach turn a little bit.
Yeah.
I think we all know care is expensive, but seeing the actual numbers is a different story.
It is a cold splash of water. Let's break it down. If you need home healthcare, which is what most people prefer, right? Staying in their own living room, you are looking at approximately $6,600 to $7,200 per month.
Wait, hold on. $7,000 a month. That's like $84,000 a year just to have someone come to the house.
And that is often just for homemaker services or a home health aide. It's not necessarily round-the-clock medical care.
Wow.
Now, if you can't stay home and need an assisted living facility, the average is around $5,000 a month. But if your needs escalate, if you need a nursing home, that is where the math gets brutal. A semi-private room is around $9,400 a month.
And if you want a private room,
You are pushing $11,000 a month.
$11,000. So over $130,000 a year. That burns through a standard retirement nest egg incredibly fast, doesn't it?
It does. But I want you to pause and think about who that really impacts. We tend to focus on the person in the bed, the one receiving the care.
Sure.
But the advisors at Confidence make a critical point. The financial devastation doesn't usually hit the sick spouse the hardest. It hits the healthy spouse.
Because the bills are being paid from the joint savings.
Precisely. Imagine a couple in their 70s. They have saved responsibly. One of them gets sick and needs 3 years of nursing care.
Mm-hmm.
That could easily be a $400,000 expense.
Oh.
That money comes out of the retirement pot. Then the sick spouse passes away.
Right.
The surviving spouse is now grieving alone and their financial cushion is gone. We see scenarios where the survivor is left destitute because the care costs consumed everything.
That is the nightmare scenario. You lose your partner and you lose your financial dignity at the same time. But how long does this usually last? I feel like people think, oh, it'll just be a few months at the end.
The statistics say otherwise. For men, the average need is about 2.2 years. For women, it's longer, about 3.7 years.
Okay,
But there is a wild card within the wild card.
let me guess. Alzheimer's.
The Alzheimer's factor. This is where the planning gets really difficult. With dementia or Alzheimer's, the body often remains physically strong for a long time. The heart is good, the lungs are good, but the mind needs 24/7 supervision. In those cases, care can extend to 8 years or more.
8 years at $11,000 a month. That's over $1 million.
Correct. And that is why ignoring this risk isn't a strategy, it's a gamble.
Okay, so we know the risk is huge, but here is my issue, and I think a lot of listeners feel this way. We hate traditional long-term care insurance. It feels like a scam. You pay these huge premiums, they keep hiking the rates on you, and if you die in your sleep at 95, you get nothing. It feels like setting money on fire.
That is the car insurance model. You pay a premium to transfer the risk. If you don't crash the car, the insurance company keeps the money.
Yeah.
And you are right. People have a massive psychological barrier to that when it comes to long-term care. You don't want to pay $4,000 a year for 30 years and have nothing to show for it.
Exactly. It feels like betting against yourself. I hope I get sick so I can get my money's worth. That's a terrible way to live.
Which is why the industry had to evolve. The advisors at Confidence are focusing on a different approach called asset-based long-term care.
Asset-based. Okay, so how is this different from the use it or lose it insurance?
The mindset shift is that you aren't paying an expense. You are repositioning an asset.
Okay.
Think of it like this. You have money in your left pocket, maybe a savings account, a CD, or some bonds. It's sitting there just in case. You take that money and move it to your right pocket into this asset-based policy. It is still your asset, but now it has a different job description.
And what's the job description?
They call it the live, die, quit benefit structure. It addresses every objection you just raised about traditional insurance.
Okay, walk me through it. Live, die, quit.
Scenario 1. You live, but you get sick. You need care. In this case, the policy pays for your long-term care expenses, usually tax-free.
Okay.
It acts just like insurance when you need it to.
Okay, that's the standard part. What happens if I'm the lucky one who dies peacefully in my sleep?
That is scenario 2. You die. In the old model, the money is gone. In this asset-based model, your heirs receive a death benefit. And typically, that death benefit is significantly higher than the amount of money you originally put in. So the money stays in the family. It doesn't disappear into the insurance company's profits.
It changes the math completely. So it's either for my care or it's an inheritance for my kids.
Right. And then scenario 3. You quit. Let's say you put the money in, but 5 years later, you have a totally different emergency. Maybe you need the cash back. Most of these policies offer a liquidity option, often called a return of premium. You can say, I'm out, and get your initial deposit back.
So I'm not locked in a cage. I can get my chips off the table if I really need to.
Exactly. It turns a sunk cost into a versatile asset.
That sounds great in theory, but I want to get into the weeds of how you actually pay for this. Because most people don't have $200,000 just sitting in a checking account waiting to be moved.
That is the crucial part. The Confidence team outlines 2 very distinct strategies, and it depends entirely on where your wealth is stored. The first strategy is for the person who has most of their money in pre-tax retirement accounts, like an IRA or 401k.
Which is most of us, right?
Yeah.
We've been told for 30 years to stuff that 401k.
But here's the problem with the IRA. It's a tax time bomb. If you need to pay a $10,000 nursing home bill, you can't just withdraw $10,000. You have to withdraw maybe $12,000 or $13,000 to cover the taxes and the bill. It is highly inefficient to pay for healthcare with IRA dollars.
So what's the move?
They use what you might call a tax filter. Let's look at the example from the Confidence team's presentation. Imagine a client, let's call him Bob. Bob decides to withdraw a set amount from his IRA, say $60,000.
Ouch. So Bob has to write a check to the IRS immediately on that.
He does. Let's say $20,000 goes to taxes. That leaves him with $40,000 of net after-tax money.
Okay.
He takes that $40,000 and funds an asset-based policy. And he repeats this for, say, 5 years.
Wait, play devil's advocate here. Why would Bob voluntarily pay taxes now? We're always taught to defer, defer, defer. Why take the hit early?
That is the logical objection. But look at the leverage. Bob pays the tax on $200,000 of withdrawals over 5 years. But that money, once it is inside the policy, might create an immediate death benefit of around $363,000.
So he turned $200,000 of taxable money into $363,000 of tax-free coverage.
Correct. And if he needs care, the example shows he could access about 2% of that benefit monthly. That's roughly $7,200 a month, tax-free, to pay for care.
I see. So he's basically watching the money. He pays the tax once up front to create a much larger pool of tax-free money for the future.
And remember the die scenario. If Bob never needs care, his kids get that $363,000 tax-free. If he had left the money in the IRA, his kids would have inherited the tax bill along with the money. So he's actually doing his heirs a favor, too.
Okay, that makes sense for the IRA crowd. What about the person who just has cash? Maybe they sold a business or they're just conservative and have money sitting in CDs or a savings account.
This is the single premium strategy. This is for that lazy money. You know, the money that's sitting there earning a little bit of interest, basically keeping pace with inflation, but not really working for you.
Right. It's safe, but it's stagnant.
So the strategy here is a lump sum drop-in. Let's say you have $200,000 in a CD. You move that entire block into a policy. Instantly, your coverage for care might jump to roughly $340,000.
So you get leverage from day one.
From day one.
But what about growth? If I leave my money in the market, it, hopefully goes up.
Yeah.
If I put it in this policy, does it just sit flat?
That is a great question. The Confidence team explains that many of these policies are indexed. They can track something like the S&P 500.
But wait, if it tracks the market, does that mean I can lose my principal if the market crashes? If the S&P drops 20%, does my care fund drop 20%?
No, and this is critical. Think of it like a shock absorber on a car. In the stock market, when you hit a pothole, you feel the whole crash. These policies generally have a floor, usually 0%. If the market crashes 20%, your account just stays flat. The shock absorber takes the hit, not your principal.
Okay, but there's no free lunch. What do I give up for that safety?
You give up the unlimited upside. There is usually a cap. So if the market goes up 20%, you might only get credited with a portion of that.
I see.
You aren't trying to beat the market. You are trying to get steady growth without the risk of loss.
It sounds like a bond replacement. It's the defensive part of the portfolio.
That is exactly how the advisors at Confidence view it. It's not about getting rich. It's about not getting poor. It's a defensive asset.
Talking about this, it strikes me that this isn't really a product conversation. It's a strategy conversation.
It is, and it's highly customizable. Some clients tell the team, I don't care about leaving money to the kids. I just want the maximum monthly paycheck if I get sick. So they structure it for that.
Right.
Others say, I want to maximize the legacy, so they structure it for the death benefit.
It's interesting. I started this conversation thinking about long-term care as a burden.
Yeah.
Just another bill I have to worry about. But looking at it this way, it feels more like permission.
Permission to do what?
Permission to enjoy the rest of my money. If I know this wild card is covered, if I know I have a dedicated asset that will handle the nursing home if it happens, then I don't have to hoard every other penny. I can actually buy the boat. I can take the trip.
That is the synthesis of this entire deep dive. When you act defensively and address the biggest risk, you actually liberate the rest of your portfolio. You stop managing out of fear.
And you protect your spouse. I think that's the part that sticks with me the most. It's not just about me. It's about making sure my partner isn't left picking up the pieces financially.
It forces you to answer the hard question. If care is needed, which asset gets sold first? If you don't have an answer to that, the answer is usually whatever is easiest to liquidate, which is often the worst financial decision in a crisis.
Well, this has been a heavy topic, but a necessary one. We've gone from the scary numbers to the tax filter to the live, die, quit strategy. It's a lot to process, but it's better to process it now than in a hospital waiting room.
Absolutely. The goal is to be well-informed so you can make decisions on your own terms.
Before we wrap up, we have to read a mandatory disclosure from the materials we've been discussing. It's important context for everything we've talked about today, so please listen closely.
The views expressed here are those of Chris Abeta, Dustin West, and the Confidence Financial Partners team. They do not necessarily represent those of RFG Advisories Management unless specifically stated by an RFG representative. This discussion should not be regarded as a specific or comprehensive description of advisory services provided by RFG Advisory. The views reflected and statements made in the commentary are subject to change at any time without notice. Some information here is provided in part by third-party sources. These sources are generally deemed to be reliable. However, neither Confidence Wealth Partners nor RFG Advisory guarantee the accuracy of third-party sources.
Advisory services offered by investment advisory representatives of RFG Advisory, LLC, RFG Advisory or RFG, a registered investment advisor. Confidence Financial Partners and RFG Advisory are unaffiliated entities. Advisory services are only offered to clients or prospective clients where RFG Advisory and its representatives are properly licensed or exempt from licensure. No advisory services may be rendered by RFG Advisory unless a client agreement is in place. RFG Advisory is an SEC-registered investment advisor. SEC registration does not constitute an endorsement of RFG by the Commission, nor does it indicate that RFG or any associated investment advisory representative have attained a particular level of skill or ability.